Okay, so this is where we're going to start the cutting and buffing process on the spray can paint job. Uh, I'm hoping you can see this on camera. Some of the kind of rougher spots, like right there in the paint. What we're going to do is just wet sand down the whole car. I've got a little bit of this stuff up here. I got some 800 grit sandpaper that I'm going to use for wet sanding some of the rougher spots, like the more obvious imperfections. Some 1000 grit I'm probably going to go over the whole car with. I've also got a little bit of 2500 sandpaper that I'm going to be using after that. I've got that still sitting inside my apartment right now that I'm going to use after I get this whole thing cut back with the 1000. And then from there, what I'm going to do is go with the polish that I've already got in here from whenever I painted, or I spray painted some wheels on my 2005 Tahoe. And it came out pretty good, I'm probably going to have to work a little bit harder on this because this is the actual paint of the car as opposed to just being, clear coat on the wheels of a car that I don't drive as much now because I have a Subaru for daily as opposed to the Tahoe. But I'm gonna hope that it comes out pretty good. If it's taken way too long to do, I'm probably gonna just go and pick up some cutting compound, work that down, and then go back to that to finish it off. And true to this paint job so far, it's all going to be done by hand. There's not going to be any power equipment that I'm going to be using on this, simply because I don't have a buffer. I really need the equipment to do it. And, I figure if I'm doing it all by hand, it'll give me the most amount of control over not just burning through it and, ruining the paint job I just spent all this time doing. Now, granted, there are literally, 8 layers of clear coat on this. I'm not that concerned about burning through it. But, it's my first time doing it, so I'm not going to, take any unnecessary risks. But I'm going to show you some of the worst spots right now. It's kind of like right there. There's a little bit of where there's some air bubbles that kind of came up the surface and burst. There's also a couple right there. There's actually a hair or 2 hairs right here that found their way into the paint. I never noticed until after I was done. Hopefully be able to sand that down to where it's less noticeable, as well as these little spots right here. And some of it's kind of the general orange peel that's predominantly on the trunk. The quarters actually are in pretty alright condition. They really won't need too much aside from just maybe a light shot of the 1000 grit and then the polishing compound. So I've got, conservatively high hopes for how this is going to go. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now, I'm going to pop the top off of it and just, get going on it. Okay, so a little bit into the sanding process here. I've done all the really rough spots with 800 already, and I'm moving on to the 1000 grit. So this whole trunk right here, it's all done in 1000 grit, as well as this quarter panel right here. This is all in 1000, and I hit the top side of the door. I'm not getting too crazy with it, trying to get out every single little bit of orange peel, just because it's not that critical. As well, there's a few little spots. It's mostly smooth, honestly, out here on the red, but it's not perfect. There's little bits of things like that. I'm not sure what happened there, so I'm not going to get too fussed up over it. But it is a little bit smoother here. This I'm going to leave with a little bit of orange peel because it's got a little bit of that going on over here. Try to keep things looking kind of consistent. But this is all smoothed out. I did one little test spot. It feels a lot smoother with some of that polishing compound right here, just to see what kind of results I was going to get. And from the side, maybe you can see it's a lot glossier, but from the top down, it's still pretty rough. I'm thinking I'm going to do that full pass with 2500 to really set this up for polish pretty good. And then depending on how it comes out after the 2500 with a little bit of that polish to test, that'll determine if I might hit up a buddy and see if I can swipe a machine polisher. I'm not sure exactly what yet. if I'm going to do that, or if I'm just going to go for it still just all by hand. But it's going to be a mess if I try to do it all by hand, because it's a lot of work. So we'll see. But I know I'm going to hand sand the whole car to get it ready. I think, I can't tell yet because I haven't polished it out yet, but I do think some of those little like spots where it looks almost like it was like kind of porous almost, I think those are knocked down pretty good, and those are gonna hide pretty well. Over here where there's those little hairs that work in, it's completely smooth. Can't really feel that there's hairs there, but obviously if you look, you can see that there's still hair stuck in the paint. So I mean, there's not really a whole lot I can do about that short of digging out the paint, but I'm not going to do that obviously. So I am going to keep going, get this all wet sanded. It's really not taking as long as I was expecting it to. I thought it was going to take longer to knock this all down, but it's smoothing out pretty good. So I'm going to keep rolling with it, and I doubt I'm going to get it done today, but who knows? We'll see. So I'll keep going, and we'll see where this takes us. Okay, so I just started playing around with the 2500 grit. Right over here, this is that little spot that I kind of did a test polish over 1000 grit. And then right here is a little small section where I did the 2500 over the 1000. And if you look at it, this still looks a little bit, I guess, darker, just because it's more polished out and you're getting more of the color of the paint underneath coming through. Whereas up here it's not quite as dark. But honestly, I think this one feels smoother. So I think once I actually polish over this, it's going to get really smooth. And then over on this section, I've already got the 2500 on about this side of the trunk. And visually 2500, 1000, not a whole lot you're going to see, except for like maybe a little bit of like clear coat imperfections still in there. That should hopefully get knocked out when I get this part over here. But from the side, you can really kind of see where it's starting to get some real gloss to it. So I think there's some real promise coming in here. It does look a little bit wavy, just because I am hand sanding all of this. I'm sure if I had somebody with a rotary sander, I could knock that out. And I've tried using like the little sanding blocks, like a little palm sander. You just hold on to it. It's supposed to clip onto the sandpaper, but it just doesn't. Those don't seem to like wet sanding. They were fine whenever I was doing body work, like 80 grit, 120 grit, stuff like that. Like through here, where there's a little bit of filler just kind of hanging out. Right in this section, you can kind of. I don't know if you can actually see it at all. But it was fine for that. But I tried wet sanding it while I was doing the primer and everything, and it just really did not want to do anything. It just kept wiping the paper off the sanding block. So I'm doing this all hand, just by hand, trying to do my best to minimize the lines, but I do see them kind of showing up, which isn't my favorite thing in the world. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm just going to keep going over it until it's all smooth, and then from there, see if maybe polishing might be able to knock out some of the, the little streaks. But I don't know. But I really don't think it's going to. Worst comes to worst, if I'm not happy with the end results, all polished up and everything, I can just pay somebody to be like, hey, there's still a lot of clear on here. Have at it with some like 2500 and like an actual rotary to knock it out. So I'm going to get back to sanding. I'll probably cut to it after I get the whole car, or the whole gray section in 2500, and then try polishing that out and see how that looks. So I'll cut to that here in a second. Okay, change of plans. This is where I'm going to round out for right now. I'm going to come back to this tomorrow. I've been at this for, I'm going to say, a good 3 hours-ish now. And I mean, while it is, it's a lot further along to being done than it was when it started, obviously, because I actually started on it. It's just a lot of elbow work, like, arms, elbow, and just a lot of effort, and I'm wearing tired of it, and I'm hungry, and I need to go get groceries as well. But one thing I did do, just to kind of hopefully show you guys, there is a little bit of promise to this, but ultimately I think I am going to have to either get somebody with a random orbital polisher or something, or I might just go and get like some drill bit attachments and just do that. Because I think I've got like maybe 20-ish minutes of use out of one of my batteries for my drill from whenever I was cleaning up the wheels and I was cleaning up all the brake dust off of it using like a wire wheel. So I think I can get a lot of it done doing that, hopefully. But I will show you kind of one spot. So out here, I'm hoping you can kind of see that light in the reflection round about in that area. Obviously it's very hazy, you can't hardly even tell where the light is. You can see a little bit, or at least I can see, a little bit of a cross where the light's coming from. But as you kind of work down, the light starts to come in, and then it even like changes colors. So it's like, it's at least from where I'm sitting, it's really clear, kind of that yellowy tint you get from an incandescent light bulb. And then as you creep up, it turns like a reddish orange, kind of like how the sun at sunset goes. Like it turns red, and then fades into nothing. So it's definitely, and it feels a lot smoother right there by comparison, more like actual finished paint. But yeah, this is a lot of effort. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna round it out here. And I'm ready to come back tomorrow, finish out the 2500, because I've got maybe, I don't know, 30% of the 2500 sanding done. And then from there, figure out how I'm going to handle the polishing out, the actual polishing. I'll probably even get like a cutting compound as well as using that polishing compound as well. So, hopefully have what's roughly like maybe a 4,000 cut. I don't really know. I'm not a detailer. I don't know what the polishing units are, for which is what. But, hopefully get this thing done. Because once this is all done and polished up, that is when I'm going to mask off, the rest of the car. Put that black stripe on, as well as put those quarter flares up there, so that way I can then put the black stripe over the quarter flare and have this be done. And once that black stripe is on there, then the white stripes going right down here and coming up kind of as one of those things there. Those will go on, and then aesthetically the car will be done. So yeah, that's I'm going to cut it here. I'll cut back this tomorrow after it's all sanded and when I'm about to start polishing. Alright, well, I have the car all wiped down with 2500 grit sandpaper. As you can see, I've got it all masked off. I tried to tape up the edges as best I could to protect them, just from getting hit with the polisher, because I should go take the plate off too. So I can hit that area a little bit better. But couldn't find any, regular drill attached polishing tools. So went and grabbed this. This is hopefully going to be all that I need to take this thing down to a really nice smooth finish. I got a couple of pads in here. Let me see which ones I got. I've got one is, as they call, an ultra fine, and one it's more of like a medium cut pad. I figure I'll try this one out, on a spot, hit it with this, see what I like. I might just start with this and see if I even need to go with this, but we'll see what happens, and then kind of just go from there and see what the results look like, because it's a car show tonight, and honestly I would really like to take this thing out there if it looks good enough to take out there. Otherwise I'll just take the Subaru hanging out over there next to the trash cans. But we'll see how it looks and see how it goes. Never polished a car before. Never used a machine polisher before. I think I mentioned before, the closest thing I've done was just hand polishing a couple wheels. But it's not crazy difficult looking. I'm gonna go slow, or not slow, but not try to get too aggressive with it, and just try to do my best and see where it takes me, and hopefully this thing will be good to go from there. And and once I get this thing polished out, all that's gonna be really left is just throwing those quarter flares on, painting the stripe along the bottom, and throwing the vinyl on, up there, and from there, then the car visually is gonna be done. For the moment, nothing's ever really done with a project. So, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get to polishing. Alright, so this is where I think I'm going to round out the video regarding polishing out the spray can paint job and the kind of results that you can get from it. This is a little bit after I filmed the last clips, probably about a good week or so. Been kind of working on a few other things on the side and waiting on a hard drive to come in so that I can actually store all these little clips semi-effectively. But as far as the results you're going to get from polishing it out, you can get some pretty solid results. I'm not even done, but I got tired of just buffing and buffing and buffing, because what I was doing, I just didn't want to burn through the clear coat, so I went with one round of a compound on a medium cutting pad, and then I just went to a polishing pad for the rest of it, and just kind of really slowly kind of cut away the paint. I mean, you can see there's still some sanding scratches, because on the trunk is where it's still the most obvious, because this is where there was the most orange peel, and had to try to cut that back with the sandpaper more than I could in any of the cutting pads, because the foam pads wouldn't really cut through it at all. It would just kind of clean up the very, very top surface of it, whereas this is what leveled it out, because now it's all level, but there are still a couple little sand scratches. And ultimately my plan is this winter, I'm going to be taking this car to some degree disassembly, and going through and repolishing out that way it's all nice and glossy, and then just kind of getting that clean. But what I did ultimately is I polished out the entire car. I wasn't planning on doing the red, but this actually came out pretty nice. It got a little bit cleaner. There's a little bit of a haze that kind of got knocked off with the polisher, so I'm glad about that. But this ultimately cleaned up pretty well, because on the sides, where I didn't have to do as much sanding, it really kind of came out nice. So I know there's a lot that can still be done with just this top section as far as cleaning up. So I'm not worried about it. I'm just going to go ahead and run with it for the next few months while it's still driving season for a car with no top. But other than that, there's just a few things I've been busy on. Got the quarter flares mounted. These is just done with the 3M tape. And then just yesterday, one of the reasons why the car's in the air, redid the black line that comes on these cars from the factory. Obviously, since I repainted, there wasn't any black line there. And also, whatever the last owner or whoever did the last paint job on the car had some pretty poor application of this. It was just pretty faded and getting beat up. And ultimately, this is just spray can undercoating, like a rubberized undercoating, so it's not going to be the most crazy durable thing in the world, but it'll be pretty easy to top coat, as it warrants it. So, not all that worried about that. Other thing I did was replace the master cylinder in the car, and it still leaks, because the old one I had leaked, but now this one's leaking from a different spot. Put the hood up here. So, the old master cylinder, because this is the new one, it was leaking back here at the base. That's why you can see that it's pretty rusty on the brake booster at the bottom there, because that's where it was leaking brake fluid. On this one, because you can probably see from like the hardware, there was some rust around here. This line right here, that one still leaks very slowly. Now, it still operates better than the last one did. It's a lot less squishy, but this one still leaks. So that's something else I got to fix. I tried using some Teflon tape to try to fill out the threads. I think the issue is that because it's so rusty, it's not getting as good of a seal as it needs to, and it's letting brake fluid pass. And it's pretty slow and it's manageable, but ultimately I'd rather fix the leak that's got caustic brake fluid getting onto my paint and making more work for me down the line. But there's more to come on this car. If you get made to this part of the video as far as the paint and polish and what kind of results you can achieve from that. It's a little teaser basically. You can expect more little things here and there as far as what's to come on the car. As far as like winter plans, like I said, I'm going to be cutting and buffing the whole car again, or at least just the back, just to really make it pop and be ready for springtime next year. Hopefully everything, this is 2020 when I'm recording this, is done by then and get back to some sense of normalcy. But goals for the winter are going to be like pulling the steering rack, because this one is a power steering rack, which I did the loop and line method, as you can see, for a D-Power, because the power steering pump that I had in this car didn't work, nor did the AC, so I deleted both those things and looped these lines, but I'm not happy with it, so I'm probably still going to pull it apart, do a true D-Power, and go from there with that. So that's something that's going to be coming. I'm going to be doing a few other things here and there. Like one thing, I'd like to pull apart the front suspension and honestly the rear suspension, just because they're crusty and gross. Not so much on the top side, but especially on the lower control arm down here. You can kind of see it. It's kind of gross looking. And also I want to replace these with NB Sport brakes. But I'm going to replace these with NB Sport brakes probably, just because there's not a whole lot to do this coming winter from what I can gather on the car, aside from just things I choose to do. Like I said, like I want to clean up the front end, go through. I may redo the bushings. I'm not quite sure yet, because the bushings on this car are in varying states of use. All the ball joint boots are torn, so that needs to get fixed. But I think the joints might still be okay. Just might need new boots and grease and everything. But like these end links, the rubber in them is kind of toast. It's still holding them in place, but it's not what I'd really prefer. And I'd love to clean up all the rust and shit on the knuckles and everything, and just make this thing, nice. But we'll see what happens. Overall spray can paint jobs, if you're willing to put in, way more effort than you would need to if you were doing it with a spray gun and a compressor, you can get good results, ultimately. So I thank you all for watching. I'm going to cut it off here, just so I don't ramble on, because this is probably going to be a longer-ish video, depending on how I cut it down. But yeah, this is where I'm going to round it out. It's totally doable. You just got to be patient and willing to put in the effort. So, like I said, I'm going to cut it there. Thank you. Like, subscribe, comment. It's all really helpful, and I'd love to talk to you guys. Take it easy.